Hey there, welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And this is the 100th episode of this podcast. And so I'm here today by myself, as you can see. If you're watching this on YouTube, and if you are, would you please hit those little buttons to subscribe and like and comment and do all of those things. If you're listening on a podcast player, you can do the same thing. You can follow the show, you can leave a review, you can do all the things. Okay, and with that out of the way, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is attunement and what it is and what it isn't and why it's so important. And so I don't actually know what because there is clinical literature on attunement, and so go read that if you're so inclined. Here's how I understand attunement as it relates to parents and children, and my work as a speech therapist, as a parent coach, as a workshop provider to educators and to parents. Attunement comes first. And what attunement is the process of getting on the same page with, starting to vibe with, becoming in sync with, in synchrony with the person that you're dealing with, talking to, hanging out with, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Words are not required. This is an energetic process, which sounds a little woo-woo, and it's not, and I'm going to tell you why. The thing is that humans have nonverbal communication, and I'm doing this right now, by the way. I am sending out, like, it is going to sound woo-woo. I'm sending out an energy with my body. You can hear it in my voice. You can hear it in the cadence, but again, words are not required. I could sit here and like look at the camera and you could probably get the same thing. Less so on an audio player. Okay, so like there is a visual component involved, but the attunement process, again, we're like meeting the other person where they are, and there's a back and forth that starts to emerge. And we can think of that as a vibration, which is why we say, yeah, I didn't really vibe with that person, right? That gets overdone these days, but there is some truth to it. So this process of attunement by which we are becoming in sync, in synchrony with another person, has to come first when we are dealing particularly with children, because when they're babies, they're not talking yet. So they don't understand things that we're explaining to them. They can only understand the emotional content of what we're putting out, right? So yes, talk to your baby, but you can read, and you've seen lots of these on Instagram, right? Like dads reading The Economist to their babies, and their babies are and Googling and smiling and doing all of those things. Why is that? Because they're reading it with that emotional tone. Have you ever talked to your dog and told them they're a big, fat, lazy piece of, doo-doo? I have. And he wags his tail and shakes his head and thinks I'm telling him lovely things because I'm doing it with that voice, right? And with that energy of, I love you. Now, do not do this. Don't tell your kids they're lazy and, fat and ugly when they can actually understand the words that you're saying, because that doesn't translate. Then it becomes very confusing. And maybe we'll talk about that in a second, why sarcasm is actually a terrible idea for young children. Let's stick with attunement for now, though. So when we can attune to another person, that is a neurobiological process. There are actually things that are happening in our brains and bodies that are causing that to happen. And when it happens, we can recognize it by the feeling that we have in our bodies. Now, this is where it gets a little wonky, because most of us are pretty much cut off from the neck up. We think that we are walking around, that we are like giant brains, heads, maybe not giant, but we are brains and heads kind of being transported around on our bodies. But that is not the case. Our bodies also have information. Our bodies are giving information. Our bodies are always receiving information. If you've got a child with a sensory processing disorder, you know what I'm talking about. Their bodies are receiving too much information. So when we attune with somebody, there is a process. It's real, it's chemical. There are neurotransmitters involved. And there's like a chemical signature that happens when we attune with another person. And that is hugely important, because if we know that attunement has a chemical signature and that chemical signature manifests in the body, then we can recognize it by the feeling that it gives us. Now, this is why I say, like, most of us are walking around with cut off from the neck up, and we don't give credence, we don't believe what our bodies are telling us most of the time, and yet we should. We should trust that when we look at our children and our hearts melt and feel soft, or sometimes I get a feeling in my belly like that, like it kind of just opens up and relaxes, that is a signal that the neurotransmitters that are involved with serotonin and oxytocin and all of those yummy feel-good hormones, that those are releasing. And that is causing a chain reaction with the child that I'm involved with, and that back and forth. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my hands moving back and forth. I'm doing a little dance here with my hands. That back and forth is critical. It's critical to any interaction. So often, and I see this with clinicians, with speech therapists, with less so with occupational therapists, because they understand the sensory piece of it, but certainly with parents, we want to like jump right into the lesson. Teachers, this happens with, we want to like teach the kids what they need to know. I need you to know that we run outside and we only walk in the hallway. I need you to know that we don't throw the peas on the floor. Okay? That message, as correct as it may be, will not be heard in the absence of attunement. They will not hear you. They will not understand. They will not pay attention. They will not acknowledge, right? Attunement has to come first. And even as I'm talking about attunement, and if you're in a quiet place and you're not driving, like let yourself kind of haze out a little bit as you're listening to this. Can you feel this drop in your stomach? Can you feel this softening in your chest? Maybe you feel it in your legs where they just kind of go, whoom, they just relax a little bit. Can you feel that attunement even with me as I am talking here? Hopefully you're talking back. I sometimes do that with podcasts. Do you do that? When you can feel the attunement, now we're in a conversation. Now we're together, okay? Before we attune, there is no togetherness. It's just two people doing their separate things, which is often why kids don't listen, or they don't appear to listen. There's nothing to listen to. They're not attuned. They're not hooked in to what it is that you're saying. And here's another thing that goes along with this, which is children, even babies, are their own energetic package. They come with their own neurobiology, right? They come with their own bodies. They are separate from us from the moment they are born. And that process of separating from their adults at various stages, right? So first, they're not so separate from us. They're pretty much on us all the time. And that is absolutely as it should be. But as they grow, if we're talking about toddlers and school-age kids, and certainly teenagers and young adults, we'll do another podcast on that sometime because that's a unique stage of development. They are in the process of growing away from us from the moment they're born. And so recognizing that they are a unique force to be attuned to is kind of your first step. So maybe I buried the lead a little bit here, but we cannot take them over with our force, right? We get to reckon with them as a whole, unique self that they are. We have to attune to that. And in the beginning, their attunement is like all over the place, right? They don't have any idea how to do it. They're not doing it on purpose. And so when I think about the adult's role in the child's growing up, if we're connecting to children, if we're attuning to children, that work is on us. That work is on the adult to figure out, how do I get in sync with this person, with this baby, with this child, with this toddler? And so certainly throughout my career, mostly without knowing it, that is what I have been doing. And it's really only in the past few years that I've become aware that that's what I'm doing. And so now I'm wanting you to understand it too. And so how do we attune? Okay, so I've described this beautiful process, because really what happens, and if you let yourself feel it, you will. I have coached many parents through this process of feeling the energetic connection with their child, like actually being that like vibration oosh, 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 with their child. It feels really good. And when I coach parents, when we get there, I can tell, because you watch their whole body relax. And then I point out to them, you feel this feeling? This is the feeling we're going for. Anytime we think we want to teach our children something, we got to go back to attunement first. Attunement comes first. So how do we attune? Like, what is the process? I think of it as, number one, being in touch with your body and being aware of the signals that your body is giving you. Because if you feel a tightness, and I like to talk about feelings being either open or closed, and this is like sensation, physical sensation of your body being either closed or opened. That's one kind of quick and dirty way to do it. Is this a closed feeling or is this an open feeling? Sometimes people can't get there, and that's fine. And I often work with people on that. Like, okay, well, so can we like tense a muscle? Okay, that's a closed feeling. Can we relax a muscle? Okay, that's an open feeling. So relaxed or tense, open or closed. Once we are open, now we've got space. And if you're listening, again, I don't know if you felt that, but I felt this space open up in my belly. Now we've got space to welcome in another person and to see where they're at. And so it is a process of getting out of our own way a little bit, removing our agenda, right? Because we can't lead with the agenda. We got to lead with attunement. There's room for the agenda later in small doses. A lot of what we talk about over at Raising Orchid Kids is, what is a just right challenge, right? So what's the next just right thing that is okay to ask my kiddo to do? What's the next just right thing that I want to do here? How do we make this manageable, doable, feasible, so that child can be successful, right? That's the big question. And so getting out of the way is the first step. And then allowing that connection to come in. After that, once you've got buy-in, now with connection, with attunement, with trust, with consistency, that's how we, I'm going to put it in air quotes, make progress with children. That's how we teach children to do more of the things that we want humans to do in a society with other people around, right? So think of like, do more sharing in the classroom, do more walking in the hallway, do more checking in on people. Are you okay when something goes wrong? Do more fixing of mistakes when they do make mistakes. But all of that, all of those skills have to happen in a safe space, right? Otherwise, we're not going to do them. Nobody wants to apologize. Nobody wants to share. Nobody wants to be on someone else's agenda walking in the hallway when there's nothing in it for them. And the thing that's in it for them in this particular case is that yummy, yummy connection and acceptance and attunement of another adult. I have said attunement so many times in this episode. I hope that you're getting like the extreme importance of this word, and of this concept, and of this very physical, energetic, neurobiological, neurochemical experience. It is one of safety. It is one of unconditional love. I'm going to get emotional even talking about it, right? Here I am. This is me completely open talking about the most important thing for children is this attunement from their adults. Unconditional love, safety to make mistakes, repair when they make a mistake, repair when we make a mistake, right? Moving forward together. It is what builds a relationship. And all the things that we want to teach children can only happen in a relationship. They are not going to do what we say, and particularly not orchid kids, complicated kids, anybody who's neurodivergent. They're not going to just like say, oh, thank you for telling me not to run in the hallway. That's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? That's not how it works. There needs to be buy-in. Just like, well, I was going to go to an adult example at work, but actually by the time we get to a job, we understand what's at stake, and that's a different set of skills. Children do not understand what's at stake, right? They will comply out of fear of being cast out for a certain amount of time. That's another thing I wanted to talk about. When we withhold attunement, it is a way of signaling unacceptability, and that is a way to get kids to modify their behavior, but it's from a fear response. And that kind of, for brains and bodies and children, not so great. When we can do it from an attunement place, so much better, so much yummier. But again, kids will respond to fear for a certain amount of time until they are bigger, until they are stronger, until they decide, I've had enough and I don't need you anymore. And that is not a place that any parent or teacher really wants to be. We don't want to be in the process of alienating children. Probably if you're listening to this podcast, you either have children, you work with children, you love children, you want to be close to them. And so, certainly there are times in an emergency when, yes, we're going to lead with safety, and our voices might get sharp and we might yell and kids might be afraid, okay? But we're not leading with that, okay? So that is not our primary tool. That is not our primary teaching modality. Is it necessary sometimes? Sure. But I want to caution you against using that as a primary tool, right? Against using judgment, correction, criticism as like a primary teaching tool. The only thing that teaches is I'm bad, I'm not doing this right, I need to change my behavior so that I can stay safe and within this tribe so they don't kick me out. And that gets into like some basic survival kinds of things that lead to isolation and self-criticism and a lack of self-awareness and a lack of resilience and all kinds of things that we don't want. When we lead with attunement, we will get way more of what we want. Are we always going to see behaviors that we love? No, we're not, because they're learning. They're still learning. And everybody is different and everybody is unique, and all the children have come here as they are, right? I like to say we don't ever really change. We just become more of who we are. And so there are those of you listening to this who will really understand what I mean by that, because your children came screaming into the world and really dropped into your existence in a very harsh way. And so you know that we don't just come here and get molded by our surroundings and our adults. We come with some stuff too, right? And so again, what's the best way to figure that out? We got to like look in there and attune to what we see, to what is there, to how to interface, how to get in synchrony with what we have. So that's what I have for you today. I hope that this has been, I don't know, informative, interesting, enlightening. I would love to hear your comments. You can always shoot me an email. My contact information is in the show notes. You can leave a comment if you're on YouTube. You can ask questions as well. I would love to hear what you think about attunement and its importance. Until next time, thank you for listening. This is the 100th episode. I'm very excited about that, and take care.